Unless you rent a car in Borneo, you're likely to arrive at Kinabalu Park via tour bus. I recommend booking through the smaller hotels, since larger companies tend to get larger buses, though you'd think that for the money, you'd get a more personalized experience. To get to the park from the center of town, you'll pass by Mount Kinabalu. Schedule a 2-day trek up the mountain. It'll be well worth the effort. I didn't film my first descent, but perhaps I'll return someday and add it to my hiking videos.
See any flower, don't touch it.
Okay.
Because some they got the powder. If you touch it, you itchy.
I'm itchy. Okay, so it's
Yeah,
irritating the skin.
Like my first cousin, the monkey, always like this.
Undoubtedly, the first thing you'll see will be the walking tour of the wild plants growing in this area. I found this to be quite interesting, since I noticed many, if not most of these plants, as I've hiked through many other parts of the island. Our walking tour was not managed by the park employees, but rather by our tour operator. He had such immediate knowledge of the plants that I thought perhaps he'd worked there in the past. He walked us through what looked like concrete replicas of natural bamboo bridges and stone walkways. If it weren't for these awkwardly obvious additions to the tour, one might otherwise think they're not actually in a park. Nevertheless, the park hosted an impressive array of plants, with an even more impressive array of explanations.
Or local people call it broken heart plant. You see, when you combine together the two leaves.
Oh, look at that. Makes a heart.
Begonia.
Begonia.
这个他们叫 begonia， 或者是心碎草。
杏穗
啊，你看，两片叶子你把它合起来，它变成一个心形。This one is rattan. For
Rattan?
making any furniture.
Okay.
Yes. This one is small one. You can see all this type.
Yep.
And this one. Also the rattan. They take this one for making any furniture.
Yep.
这个就是藤，他们就是拿来做家具的那个。这个它是小的，你看哦，全部长有刺。然后它长到一个程度之后，它 This one they call it pink maiden.
Pink maiden.
Or Mandilina speciosa. Actually, this is also the one of the berry species.
Yep.
But human cannot eat, not eatable. And this one is fern. You see the seed, or is at the bottom of the leaf. 这个就是其实这种蕨的品种，看到它下面其实全部都是它的种子。看到 And this one they call ara or fig. This one is a fruit.
Wow. Can it?
这个它们 not eatable. 这个它们其实是这种无花果的品种，它果子全部是长在底下。Noting this one. Also one of the orchid species. That here local people call it sexy lady orchid because if you see closely, it's like a lady wearing a bikini. Kerosene fruit.
Kerosene fruit.
这个他们是叫汽油果，或者是 kerosene fruit. The smell is very nice.
Wow.
Before this, the local people take this for making any massage oil. Using
Okay.
This one. Moss flower. Some people call it Mickey Mouse flower. You see
Okay.
at the top, this one look like Mickey Mouse.
Mm-hmm. The Mickey Mouse flower, and it's called the Kinabalu balsam.
Yes.
Hmm.
And this one also one type of fern. They call it bird nest fern. Means it look like bird nest.
As it grows onto the tree itself.
Yes. So you have this one of the orchid species. They call it Bulbophyllum lobi. Some people call it laughing orchid because just like a
The
tongue.
tongue is sticking out.
Yes. The nepenthes.
All right. That's a big one.
The first one they call it nepenthes burbigia. But after that the second one is Raja. I forgot the name of it. After that Tranculata. And the last one.
Those are really
Kulata.
big.
His Suta. Suta.
And those are probably, this last one's probably 10 inches or so, right?
This one, the Raja, is small one. The Nepenthes Edwardsiana. The big one.
Oh, that is wild. That's huge. That's probably about 15 or 20 inches long.
The Mount Kinabalu, the red cod. Got one is very big one. It can contain 3 liters of water inside.
3 liters of water. Wow. And what's the name of the tree again?
Christaniopsis bilacularis.
Bilacularis.
Christaniopsis.
Tristanepsis. Does it have a
Bilacularis.
colloquial name? A local name?
Local people just call it naked tree.
Naked tree.
Yes.
Okay. Because there's no bark.
The skin will drop to maintain the temperature of the tree.
This is called the sleeper orchid, and inside of the cap there's some water. Is it a...
To maintain the water for the flower.
Okay. That's where it keeps its water reserves. And here's a shaded view of the naked tree, which sheds its bark to maintain a certain temperature. It sheds its coat. That is wild. Looks like it's got muscles. Liverworts? Uh-huh.
And this one you can see the smallest orchid in Botanical Garden. 这个就是我们这边植物公园最小的兰花。看到吗？这个快点一个这个我们叫利亚纳，它小的抓是卷在土壤里，它一起长上去，以后小孩子。Wild banana.
Wild bananas.
The smallest banana in Botanical Garden. 它的那个果子的 size 只可以长到这么大。Top one is they call sleeper orchid. Prophyllum.
Sleeper orchids, huh?
After the main park, most tours offer the visitors a chance to go to a Rafflesia farm. It's not an official stop, so many tours might not offer it. But ask your driver to go there. It's a great way of seeing the world's largest flower without having to hike a half day in the humid heat just to have an off chance of seeing one.
So for the second time while in Malaysia, I'm going to go and see the rare Rafflesia flower. There's one that's 2 days old that we're going to go see right now. And then we're going to see another one that's 1 day old. The first one is not quite as big, but it's, I think there's a couple of them there. The second one that I'm going to see, though, is going to be 86 centimeters wide on its first day of bloom. So we'll see if that one's worth the visit. If you come out here and drive all the way to where the hot springs are, the counter for this particular area where the Rafflesia are not necessarily common, but most likely to be found, you can pay 30 ringgit and get in to see it. Regardless if you go on a package tour or not, you're going to pay this fee because it's not included in the package if you book a package, because they never know when they're going to be blooming. So kind of a tough chance.
This one is die before blooming.
Yeah.
And that one, the big one, around 6 months, and that one, the 3 months.
So it looks like they're growing on this vine right here, or that root system underground somewhere. So we're here at the Rafflesia, and this is the last day that it will be blooming. They've covered it here just to make sure nobody touches it. It's quite big. I'd say it's about, this one's about 2.5 feet across. Probably about 70, I would say 60 to 70 centimeters. So off in the distance I see what looks like a bird of paradise, or a heliconia plant. And here's also a durian tree. It's got fruit up there. It's not quite big enough to pick yet. But. So this is the Rafflesia. I think originally people thought that they were meat-eating carnivorous plants, but really they just have a very pungent rotting flesh smell that attract a certain type of fly that actually does help pollinate other Rafflesia in the area. And they measure the petal in the back to the petal in the front from the base of the opening of the flower. So they came up with about 86 centimeters on this one. So when it's fully open, it'll be a pretty big flower. It'll be about 1 meter across, which is pretty impressive. That's a pretty amazing looking flower. There's actually another small pod right down here. The longer they gestate, the bigger the flower is going to be. So 18 months is probably the end of the gestation period, and that's going to be the biggest flowers. There's actually some, looking around, there's some all over the place here. There's probably a handful immediately in front of me. 1, 2, 3. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we've got 8, 9. Looks like 10. There's at least 10. Here we go. There's another couple. There's a big one here. There's 11, 12. The leaves are very brittle. It's almost like a leaf even. Almost like an oak leaf. It's kind of veiny. Really are quite a lot of these guys around here. So these are going to be exploding all over the place. This is, I guess, a Rafflesia garden, so to speak. And so the life of these flowers is interesting. There's no telling, there's no pattern as to where or when they'll blossom. In some cases they can bloom as long as a week, but essentially they turn into a black sort of gooey mound of, I don't know, blackness. It's really kind of strange how it happens. The leaf itself, to the touch, is very interesting. It's almost like a fleshy feel to it. The smell is definitely very pungent. Getting down into it as I did in West Malaysia, it's definitely ripe in there. And in West Malaysia, they attract a specific type of bug that I don't see around here. That's a large fly that almost looks like a hornet. But you know, they've evolutionarily over time chosen what pollinates them, and clearly it's been working for them. They're still considered rare. They're not considered endangered or anything like that. And they are thought to be, in some regions, carnivorous, and in some regions they're thought not to be. My opinion is that the research that I've found, and just looking at them, I don't see the remains of bugs in there. There may be some species that are being referred to in my research that I'm not finding in other areas of my research. And collectively, they make up a very limited area, a region of of the genus that they're in. So,
after finishing at the Rafflesia farm, the most likely last stop will be at the ethnobotanical gardens. The entryway to the gardens boasts a very out-of-place concrete watering hole abutting the green backdrop of the rainforest. Skip this if at all possible, and head instead for the Canopy Walk. There's also a waterfall near the end of the trail, and if you keep going, the ethnobotanical gardens are definitely worth the time to hike through. We arrived during Hari Raya, the Islamic holiday following the Hijrah of Ramadan, so, not surprisingly, there weren't many Muslims at the park. Unfortunately, however, it seemed like every Chinese person on the island took full advantage of that, thinking that the Canopy Walk wouldn't be crowded. It might actually be packed like this all throughout the year, but even with the crowds, it's hard to turn down a Canopy Walk. One of the reasons for the long wait is that Asians, being the snap-shooting, camera-cheesing folks that they are, must get selfies on the bridge. Every single one of them. Another reason is because they only allow a certain number of people on the bridges at a time. Understandably, this rule is in place for a good reason, not the least of which are lawsuits that would arise from a family of 5 taking a 100-meter plunge into the understory.
it's not all that thin.
After the canopy tour, head to the ethnobotanical gardens. It was undoubtedly my favorite part of the trip. This part of the park is still under a bit of repair, which could have been the reason that no one else was in the area. The sidewalks, and general attention to the landscaping, indicated that it may have been the off-season for the resident gardeners, but I thought this added a little bit to the overall feel of the natural aesthetic of the place. I also enjoyed the fact that almost all of the plants of interest were labeled with both the scientific name and the colloquial, and in English. There were budding plants, plants bearing fruit, succulent plants, brightly colored plants, plants I have definitely never seen before, and plants acting as both hosts and predators. There were spiny ones and smooth ones, big ones and small ones. It was a veritable smorgasbord of floristic expression. And there, in the tranquil hum of insects working and flying and selecting adequate mates, I found myself lost in the lineage of the immensity of the time it must have taken to diversify the evolution of these amazing contributions to the life that we have on this planet. In just these compact grounds alone, there is a bubbling over of life, a microcosmic biome of sustenance and richness. And if all that exists in this tiny place, what must there be in the larger worlds of our cosmos? And I find myself on the opposite end of the planet from where I was born, thinking only that my feet don't wander anywhere near the distance my mind does. Last on your trip should be a visit to the waterfall to cool off. The trailhead will be back toward the entrance, and it splits off with the ethnobotanical gardens. You'll know you're getting close when you see the results of Western fashion magazines clinging tragically to the ass cleavage of a mullet-sporting Asian stumbling completely out of place through the woods. Watching Chinese city dwellers in nature is a strange thing. Many of them don't have a defined concept of respecting nature. One man threw his bottle right at my feet as I was walking by, detouring not only common courtesy, but also bypassing the notion that he was less than 20 meters away from the nearest trash bin. The swimming hole at the base of these falls is pretty brisk, but that's all the more reason to take a dip. It's also one of the few places in this area that you'll run into any white faces. Pushing through the heat is tough when it's fueled by jungle humidity. Not many Westerners can endure it. We seem to have less of a tolerance for higher temperatures than our Asian neighbors. All told, your trip to Kota Kinabalu should definitely include a trip to the park of its namesake. Even if you come here for a more rustic trek into the jungle, Kinabalu Park will remind you of your own humanity in the wilds of the island spectacle.